You are welcome. We highlighted and saw the theories of demand. Now we're going to be looking at very important questions that follows up. And the first one is, if the demand increases without a change in supply, equilibrium price and quantity will. If the demand increases. Now, one thing about questions in economics, it's not something you just jump into. It's something you reason. Remember, economics is the study of human behavior. So human beings are unpredictable. Therefore, you don't just come and predict like science, empirical. No. You need to look at the question, understand it before you now have to choose your answers. Please, don't rush into it. Don't do, I too know. Just concentrate, understand the question, and choose your answer. He said, if the demand increases, that means the demand for a commodity has now increased, but the supply, he said, without a change in supply, that means supply still remain a change. Equilibrium price and quantity will what? Shift inward, fall, rise, remain unchanged. Equilibrium price. The most important thing that matters to us here is price. The demand of the commodity has increased. If demand increased and supply did not increase, price will automatically rise. That's just it. Price will increase. And that gives us the first one. A says shift inward, B says fall, C says rise, and D says remain unchanged. There's no way to remain unchanged. There's no way to shift inward. Shift inward means decrease. Fall means fall. Rise means to rise. So definitely the price of the commodity will rise. Another word for this rise is increase. If there's increase here and there's no rise, we would have chosen increase. So the answer is C, which is a rise. Then number two says the graph below illustrates. The graph below illustrates. We have two graphs that is illustrating here. The very first one is talking about without a corresponding change in demand, there is a shift. There is a shift in the supply curve from S1 to S0. And then if you look at the quantity here is from Q1 to Q0 to Q1. If there is a shift in the demand curve, the graph below illustrates, and then you have this particular second one, which is talking about a decrease in demand. These two demand is altering each other. These two curves is altering each other. And you can only find this in a competitive demand. In a competitive demand. Then the next one, it says, in the table above, the income elasticity of clothing is period 1 is 1,000. We have family income 1,000 for the period 1, then 1,500 for the period 2. Then expenditure on clothing is 100 for the period 1 and 200 for the period 2. Now, the question now is, in the table above, the income elasticity of clothing is what? Income elasticity of clothing is what? Now, we are going to solve this. The first period, we now have the formula here is old price minus new price over old price. Now, in this, you cannot say new price minus old price over old price times 100 over 1. Now, let's write it. Please note the formula. New price minus old price over old price times 100 over 1. Now, we're going to solve. What is our new price? 1,500. Our old price is 1,000. Then we now say 1,500 minus 1,000 over 1,000 times 100 over 1. Now we have 500 over 1,000 times 100 over 1. When you cancel over 1,000, then you have 0 here, 0 here, 0 here, 0 here, 0 here, 0 here. So what you have here is 50. You circle. The first one is 50. So you go back. The second one says expenditure on clothing The first period is 100 naira and the second period is 200. You go back, look at the formula. The formula is stated. Let me circle the formula so that you can, let me use another color to circle it so that you can always note it. Okay, good. Old price minus new price over old price times 100 over 1. Then the other one said 200 minus 100. This one will now give us 200 minus 100 over 100 times 100 over 1. This gives us 100 over 200 minus 100 is over, that's 100 over 100 times 100 over 1. You just cancel, and this gives us 100, which is equals to 100. You circle. Now, what is the formula? Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Now, what does that tell us? Percentage change in quantity demanded here is 100 over percentage change in income. Income is what? Family income is 50. Now, we now go back. Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. Okay, now percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income, we have our percentage change in quantity demanded here is 100 and percentage change in income is 50. So what we just have is 100 over 50. This going to here 1, this here 1, this here is 2. Then we go back to the options. The options here said in the table above, the income elasticity of demand, we have 2. Answer here is 2. Answer is equals to 2. Then our option here is A 0.5, B 2.0, C 2.5, D 5.0. Our answer is 2.0. B. That settles it. Then the fourth question, it said the burden of a government tax on a commodity. The burden of a government tax on a commodity whose demand is inelastic. We say inelastic is, these are commodities which if there is an increase in price, the demand will not change because they are necessity goods. Consumers don't have choice in inelastic commodity. But elastic commodity, small change in price, consumers will frown at it. Now, the burden of a government tax on a commodity whose demand is inelastic will be A, be borne only by the government. No. Fall more heavily on consumers, be shared equally between consumers and producers, fall more heavily on producers. It will not be, if as long as inelastic, it will not fall on any producer. It will not be shared by both producers and consumers. The burden will fall more on the consumers. The burden is a fall more heavily on consumers because it is inelastic. It is inelastic. Because it is inelastic. Inelastic are commodities that the tax on it is being borne by the consumers. Please note that. Then number 4. Okay. Number 5 now. An important determinant of price elasticity of demand is an important determinant of price elasticity of demand. Please, let's note this. Important determinant of price elasticity of demand is, I've said this before, price is very important. The state of technology, that talks about cost elasticity of demand. The price of other commodities, the ease of substitution, government policy. When we talk about an important determinant of price elasticity of demand, is talking about the price of other commodities. The price of other commodities. Now, the law of demand can be expressed. The law of demand can be expressed as quantity demanded is a function of price. Please note that. The law of demand. Quantity demanded is a function of price. QD is equals to F of P. Quantity demanded is a function of price. That's QD is equals to F of P. That's the answer. Number 7, the demand curve faced by a monopolist is opposite of perfect competitor. So the demand curve is downward sloping. Downward sloping. So let us see what it is talking about here. A, positive slope, vertical slope is not vertical. Horizontal slope is not horizontal. This is your vertical, this is your horizontal. So the answer, he said negative sloped. The answer here is negative. You can see this is the monopolist curve. It's going downward. It's going downward. So it's negative sloped. The overall demand for crude, that's question number 8 now. The overall demand for crude oil for various user is an example of a derived demand. When the demand for oil is a derived demand, but for various user, are we getting this whole thing now? The demand for oil, crude oil, is a derived demand. Why is it a derived demand? Because crude oil on its own cannot satisfy human wants. It cannot satisfy human wants. But when we talk about the various users, so that becomes more than one. A, derived demand. B, competitive demand. C, composite demand. D, complementary demand. Composite is when it is needed for more than one, for various use. So the answer here is composite demand. That settles it. Question number 9. It said, which of the following is a major determinant of price elasticity of demand? Price elasticity of demand. A major determinant of price elasticity of demand. A, the price of the commodity, availability of factors of production, the price of factors of production, income of the consumer. Which of the following is a major determinant of price elasticity of demand? Now, we always say it, one of the determinants of price elasticity of demand is the price of the commodity. Now, this answers it as A. Question number 10. The demand for 2 or more commodities to satisfy a particular want is the demand for 2 or more commodity, question number 10, to satisfy a particular want is A, derived demand, B, composite demand, C, competitive demand, D, joint demand. To satisfy more than one want is jointly demanded. The answer here is D. Very simple. You just see it. Then question number 11. One of the factors affecting change in demand for a commodity is the A, supply of the commodity, availability of substitutes, price of the commodity, technical know-how. Let's take it again. It said one of the factors affecting change in demand for a commodity is the A, supply of the commodity, availability of substitutes, price of the commodity, technical know-how. Availability of substitutes is one of the factors affecting change in demand of a commodity. So the answer here is B. Let's go to question number 12. This is question number 11. Question number 11, question number 12. Question number 12. Say one of the factors responsible for the downward sloping of the demand curve from left to right is A, increasing marginal utility, the price of other commodities, marginal rate of substitution, that's diminishing marginal utility. You see, they said, what is diminishing marginal utility? This is as a result when more of a particular commodity is being consumed by a particular consumer, the utility or the satisfaction derived from that particular commodity will start to diminish. It becomes negative. So the answer here is diminishing marginal utility, D. Question 13. If the price of commodity T changes, this will result in the price of commodity changes, is just, we're talking about change in quantity demanded now. If the price of commodity changes, this results in A, movement along the same curve, a new equilibrium quantity. That's question number 13. If the price of commodity changes, this results in a movement along the same curve, a new equilibrium quantity, an inward shift of the demand curve, an outward shift of the demand curve. When there is a change in quantity demanded, it's a movement along the demand curve. So the answer here is A, movement along the same curve. Please, let's note that. He said if Mr. T changes the monthly quantity of garri he usually consumes from 5 kobo to 8, from 5 kilogram to 8 kilogram, from 5 kilogram to 8 kilogram as a result of increase in income. D is an example of A, increase in demand, B, an increase in quantity demanded, C, an increase in per capita income, D, a decrease in demand. He changes the monthly quantity of garri that he consumes from 5 kilogram to 8 kilogram. This is as a result of an increase in demand of the commodity that he's consuming, which is A, increase in demand of the commodity from 5 to 8. He increases his demand. If it is from 5 to, let's say, 4 or something, that's decrease in demand. 5 to 8 is increase in demand. That answers the question directly. Now, this question says, given that quantity demanded is equals to 34 minus 2p and quantity supply is equals to 20 minus 5p, find the equilibrium price. QD is equals to 34 minus 2p, 34 minus 2p, and QS is equals to 20 minus 5p. Say find the equilibrium price. Okay, now we know that QD is equals to QS. Okay, quantity demanded to be equilibrium point is QD is equals to QS. Then we now have 34 minus 2p is equal to 20 minus 5p. Okay, now we collect our like terms. Collect like terms we have 34 minus 20 is equals to, this particular minus 2p is crossing the sign of equality to the right hand side, it becomes positive. Then we now have 5p plus 2p. Now 34, okay, yeah, 34 minus 20 will give us 14. 14 is equals to 7, that's 7p. So we divide both sides by the coefficient of p. Both sides by the coefficient of p. Divide both sides by the coefficient of p. So that will now give us 14 over 7 is equals to 7p over 7. Now by the time we now divide, 7 here 1, 7 here is 2, 7 here 1, 7 here is gone. So p now is equals to 2. That's the answer. We go back to see whether we have it there as the option. Okay, now p now we say is equals to 2 naira. I'm seeing naira there. It's a given that QD is equals to 34 minus 2p and QS is equals to 20 plus 5p. Find the equilibrium price. The equilibrium price, A says 7, B says 2, C says 32, and this says 14. Our answer here is 2B. That's the answer. Then we go to number 16. It says, which of the following commodity has a negative substitution effect? Which of the following commodity has a negative substitution effect? A, honey. B, medicated soap. C, Maggi. D, rice. A negative substitution, when their price increases, your demand for them will decrease. You don't really need it. Obviously, you don't have any choice but to take honey, Maggi, and rice. How many people consume medicated soap? That is the question. So the answer here is medicated soap. Answer. Question number 16. This is question number 15. Question number 14. Question number 17. The burden of a government tax on a commodity whose demands are inelastic will A, be borne only by the government, B, fall more heavily on consumers, C, be shared equally between consumers and producers, and D, fall more heavily. I think we've done this before. The answer is B. I told us that a commodity which is inelastic in nature, the burden of tax is always falling more on the consumers. Why is it like that if we ask the question? It is like that because these are commodities that consumers cannot do without. You cannot do without them. You will always need them. You always want to have them. So when you always want to have them, obviously, when the price increases, you will still want to purchase more of them or buy more of them. Therefore, if government should now place a tax on this kind of commodity, the burden will not be borne by the government or by the producer, but rather by the consumers. Question number 18. He said, an important determinant of price elasticity of demand is the state of technology, the price of other commodity, the ease of substitution, government policy. An important determinant of price elasticity of demand, the ease, ability for there to be a substitute. Commodities that can be substituted. This is the price, the ease of substitution. That's the answer. That's the answer. Question number 19. Derived demand is usually used with reference to A. Derived demand is usually used, question number 19, with reference to A, superior goods. We know what superior good is. Can we use derived demand for superior good? Superior goods are those goods that the income, as the income of the consumer increases, the demand for this commodity will increase. Inferior good. These are goods that as your income increases, your demand for them will decrease. That's the difference between superior and inferior goods. Then we see cost of production. Cost of production is mainly on supply. Then the factors of production. The factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Now, we also note that labor, what is the demand for labor? We see that the demand for labor is a derived demand. So this number 19 is factoring into the factors of production, which is derived demand. Labor cannot satisfy itself on its own. When you employ labor, it cannot give you any satisfaction. But when labor is put into work, it satisfies your action directly. So it's called derived demand. A commodity will be demanded only if, question number 20, a commodity will be demanded only if A, consumers' income increases, B, it has no close substitute, C, the price is low. A commodity will be demanded only if. Can we look at that question? It's very tactical. So, under one condition will the commodity be demanded. Only if D now says it has utility. What do we think should be the answer here? As far as I'm concerned, the answer is D. And I will give you an example. I will give you a reason why it is D. It has utility. What is utility? Utility is you can only buy a commodity when you derive satisfaction. Another word for utility is satisfaction. So when it has satisfaction, you will buy. It's not about your price, the price is low. If the price is low, if you don't have satisfaction in it, you won't buy it. If it has processes or not, you will not buy. But if you have satisfaction in it, you can always buy the commodity. So the answer here is it has utility. that has brought us to the end of this very wonderful, inclusive, important, embracing, simplified topic, demand, theory of demand. I'll see you in the next topic. Thank you.